The next morning came fast and loud. Ron sat up with his hair in a mess, blinking at his schedule. "We've got double potions with the Slytherins," he groaned. "That's just evil." Hermione was already dressed, combing her hair with deliberate force. "You'll want to be on time. Snape takes lateness as a personal offence." "Brilliant," Ron muttered. "I love being personally offended before breakfast." They made it to breakfast just in time. The great hall was humming with noise. Owls arriving, toast levitating from platters, students comparing timetables and groaning. Hermione had laid out her quills in neat order beside her plate. "We should leave a few minutes early. I want to make sure we get seats near the front." Ron rolled his eyes. "You want to be closer to Snape?" Fred and Geroge had some things to say about him. Nasty things. "Oh, yay? Like what, Ron?" "Like how his hair is so greasy that you would think his head is full of devil's snare." "Hopefully we have a spiel for that," Harry joined in. "Well, I just want to see the board," Hermione said. "And I'm sure your brothers are exaggerating." Harry sat between them, chewing his toast, eyes drifting toward the staff table. Snape's gaze swept the hall like a cold breeze. When it landed on Harry, it stayed there. Too long, too sharp. Harry looked away. "He's looking at you like you stepped on his cat," Ron muttered. "I don't think he has one," Hermione said. "But I bet if he did, it would bite." Dungeons were colder than the rest of the castle, not just in temperature but in tone. The stone walls didn't echo like the upper halls. They absorbed sound. The torches burned low and greenish, and the air smelled faintly of something sharp and metallic. "This place is like a vampire's pantry," Ron muttered as they descended the last step. Hermione, who had been rechecking her notes for the 5th time, didn't look up. "It's meant to regulate potion temperatures. Low ambient heat stabilizes ingredients." Ron blinked. "You actually like it down here?" "I like controlled variables." "Right. Because potions aren't stressful enough already." Harry said nothing. He was watching the way the Slytherins had taken the front 2 rows of benches without hesitation. Draco Malfoy sat in the centre, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle, as if he'd been born into the position. They found seats near the middle, Hermione on Harry's right, Ron on his left. The 3 of them hadn't yet chosen sides in anything, but the table was already dividing itself. Then the door creaked open. Professor Snape swept into the room like a storm cloud, black robes billowing, eyes scanning the class like he was searching for something to destroy. "There will be no foolish wand-waving in this class," he said, not pausing. "No silly incantations or charms. I do not expect many of you to appreciate the subtle science and exact art that is potion-making." He continued, voice smooth and low and dangerous. Hermione sat bolt upright, eyes shining with focus. Ron was already slouching. Harry tried to listen. He did, but Snape kept glancing at him. Not in the usual "you're famous" sort of way. In a "you shouldn't be here" sort of way. Harry's stomach tightened. Then Snape stopped mid-sentence and turned. "Mr. Potter," he said, voice like oil on water. "Our new celebrity finally joins us." Harry didn't move. "Tell me, Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry blinked. "I don't know, sir." Snape's lip curled. "Tut-tut. Fame clearly isn't everything." Hermione's hand shot up. Snape ignored it. "Let's try again," he said. "Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" "I don't know, sir." Ron muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "What's his problem?" Snape's eyes flicked to Ron. "Clearly," he said, "the problem is contagious." Hermione's hand was still in the air. Snape turned to her reluctantly. "Miss Granger." "A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, sir," she said, voice quick but controlled. "It can save someone who's been poisoned." Snape nodded very slightly. And Asphodel and Wormwood? They make a draught of living death, sir. Harry glanced at her. She didn't look smug. She looked anxious, like she wasn't sure if helping him had made things better or worse. 10 points to Gryffindor, Snape said, without a shred of warmth, for someone doing the reading. He turned back to Harry. Let's hope some of it rubs off on your neighbour. Harry said nothing, but inside something twisted. Not anger, not yet. Just the quiet knowledge that this man had already decided who he was, and that he would have to prove him wrong. They filed out into the corridor, Snape's voice still echoing in their heads. That was mental, Ron said. He hates you. I mean, really hates you. I noticed, Harry said. He practically spat your name, like it was venom. He's a complicated man, Hermione said, though her tone lacked conviction. Ron scoffed. Complicated? He looked ready to throw you in a cauldron. Harry turned to Hermione. Why didn't he ask you those questions first? She hesitated. I think he wanted to see if you knew, or expected you to, or wanted to humiliate you. Harry nodded, eyes down. Well, mission accomplished. No, she said firmly. He's not right about you. Ron shrugged. Who cares what he thinks? I bet Fred and George have some idea for getting back at him. We'll nick it. Harry gave a small smile. Hermione walked beside them, her bag bouncing lightly against her hip. Still, we should go over the lesson again. The draught of living death comes up in the OWLs, and Bezoars are listed in Hermione, Ron said. You do realise we're first years, right? We've got 6 years before the OWLs. It's never too early to prepare. Ron gave Harry a look that said, She's going to drive us mad, isn't she? The sky was clear, the wind sharp, and the smell of grass fresh enough to convince even the most stubborn student that this was what magic was meant for. 20 broomsticks lay in 2 neat rows on the lawn outside the castle. The class stood beside them, some wide-eyed, some wary, and one girl already halfway through reciting the manufacturer's specs of the brooms under her breath. Madame Hooch arrived with short grey hair, yellow eyes, and the unmistakable gait of someone who could still outfly every student here. Well then, she barked, what are you waiting for? Everyone stand to the left of your broom. Come on, come on! Keep your toes behind the line. Harry stepped up beside his broom. It looked like it had been swept out of the closet just this morning. He glanced sideways. Ron was grinning. Hermione was adjusting her stance like she was about to perform surgery. Stick out your right hand over the broom and say, up, Madame Hooch instructed. Up, the class chorused. Harry's broom leapt instantly into his hand. Ron's hit him in the nose. Hermione's rolled over lazily like a sleepy dog. Oh, come on, she muttered, trying again. Up, up, up. It rose a few inches, wobbled and dropped. Ron snorted. Want to borrow a megaphone? She glared. It's clearly a responsiveness calibration issue. This model doesn't react well to logic, Ron offered helpfully. Interference, she snapped, and poor craftsmanship. Harry was quietly laughing. Madame Hooch demonstrated mounting the broom. Then she walked between the rows, adjusting grips and barking corrections. When I blow my whistle, kick off, hover for a moment, then come back down. Harry's heart thudded. This was it. The first thing, maybe anything, that felt natural before it even began. The whistle blew. The moment Harry kicked off the ground, everything else fell away. The wind rushed against his face, clean and cold. The ground slipped away beneath him, and for the first time gravity felt optional. He hovered, easy, balanced, as if the broom wasn't made of wood but instinct. Then he glided down, slow and smooth, landing without a sound. Ron was watching him, eyes wide. "Blimey," he said, "you've done this before." "No," Harry said, laughing. "You're joking." Harry shook his head. Madame Hooch gave him a sharp look, not unfriendly, more like she was recalibrating her expectations. "Well done, Mr. Potter." Across the lawn, Hermione had just managed to lift off, only to panic halfway into the hover and lurch sideways into the grass. She sat up, scowling, hair full of leaves. "I read about the ideal posture," she grumbled. "Apparently posture isn't the problem." Ron leaned toward Harry. "She's gonna hex the broom out of spite, isn't she?" Harry grinned. "Probably." The lesson ended with no injuries, one nearly broken wrist, Neville, of course, and Harry still feeling the ghost of the wind in his ribs. They were walking back toward the castle when Malfoy's voice rang out from behind. "Look what I found." He held up a small glass ball, glittering in the sun. Neville's Remembrall. He must have dropped it during class. "Give it here, Malfoy," Harry said. Malfoy smirked. "Come and get it, Potter." Harry's fists clenched. He stepped forward, but Ron stopped him. "Forget it," Ron muttered. "He's not worth it." But Harry was already moving. Malfoy mounted his broom. "I'll leave it up on the roof," he called, kicking off the ground. "Let Longbottom try to find it up there." He zipped into the air, holding the Remembrall high. Harry didn't hesitate. "Harry, don't," Hermione said sharply. "You'll get us all in trouble." Too late. The broom lifted beneath him like it had been waiting for the command. He shot upward, not rising, climbing like he was born to it. Malfoy turned, surprised. Harry leaned forward, narrowed his eyes and streaked toward him. "Give it back! Make me!" Harry didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just surged forward, dodged the wobble of Malfoy's broom, and snatched the Remembrall out of his hand in one clean arc. Below them, a collective gasp. Malfoy lunged forwards to snatch the Remembrall back, but Harry was too quick, swiftly flying below him and tipping the bush of his broom slightly up. Malfoy lost control and spiraled to the ground. He pulled back in time, roughly landing, and stormed off with Crabbe and Goyle. Harry descended with a smoothness that felt unfair. Even the broom seemed impressed with him. When he landed, Hermione ran over, her face pale. "You could have been expelled," she hissed. "That was incredibly irresponsible." Ron caught up beside her, panting. "That was brilliant." Harry looked at them both. "Blimey, that was a rush. I've never felt that free in my life," he said. Hermione folded her arms. "Well, enjoy your freedom. You might not have any left if a teacher saw." Ron slapped him on the back. "In any case, you've got to teach me how to do that." They hadn't even made it back to the castle when Professor McGonagall appeared at the edge of the lawn, her robes snapping in the wind like an angry flag. They hadn't even reached the castle doors when Professor McGonagall appeared, her robes snapping like thunderclaps in the wind. "Potter!" Harry froze. Ron did too. "Oh no," Ron whispered. "You're about to be expelled, aren't you?" Harry didn't answer. "Follow me," McGonagall said, turning sharply on her heel. He didn't dare look at Hermione as he trailed behind her into the entrance hall. His chest was tight. He'd broken a rule. Again. Of course this would be the end of it. He imagined the letter being sent to the Dursleys. Returned to sender, probably. Mistake admitted. She led him down a quiet side corridor he hadn't seen before. The suits of armour here were older, taller. One turned its head slightly as he passed, and Harry flinched. McGonagall knocked once on a door, then stepped inside. Harry waited outside, heart pounding. After a minute, a tall, broad-shouldered boy stepped out. He looked vaguely familiar, older, confident, hair wind-blown like he lived on a broomstick. "You're Harry Potter, right?" he asked. Harry nodded. McGonagall told Wood what she saw Harry do on the broom. The boy grinned. "If you can fly like the professor is saying, then I can't wait to see you on the pitch." Wood gave an approving nod to McGonagall and went back to class. McGonagall then turned to Harry. "You're not in trouble," she reassured, answering his fear before he could voice it. "In fact, you may have just solved a long-standing problem." Harry stared. "You're joining the Gryffindor Quidditch team. As Seeker." He blinked. "But first years aren't allowed." "I've made an exception," she said. "You've got natural talent. I'll get Professor Dumbledore's approval. You'll report to Oliver Wood tomorrow evening." She handed him a slip of parchment, then looked him over one last time, not unkindly, but as though reassessing him. "You may go." And with that, she left him in the hall next to a giant trophy case of Quidditch accolades. Harry saw his green eyes reflect on the golden trophy for Seeker, James Potter. Later that evening, Harry sat by the fire in the Gryffindor common room, the Remembrall resting on the table beside him. He hadn't meant to keep it out, but he couldn't bring himself to put it away. It still felt warm in his memory, the wind, the catch, the freedom and the fall that never came. Ron flopped into the armchair across from him. "You should have seen Malfoy's face," he said, "like someone told him he'd been sorted into Ravenclaw. I bet the thought of using his tiny brain is terrifying." Harry smiled at his support. "I'm on the team," he said, almost like a question. "Really?" Ron bellowed. "You're on the team? First-year Seeker. That's historic." Hermione approached a few moments later, arms folded, her expression unreadable. "I wrote down everything you did in the air," she said. Harry blinked. "You wrote it down?" "I observed the trajectory and your wrist angles from a safe distance, obviously." She handed him a sheet of parchment. It was covered in tidy notes, angles, diagrams, and footnotes. He took it carefully, like it might disappear. The drawing of him was strangely accurate. "Thanks," he said. "You're still mad," Ron said, looking at her sideways. "I'm not mad," Hermione replied. Then, after a pause, "Just don't make it a habit." "I didn't mean to," Harry said. "I just didn't want Malfoy to break it." Hermione looked down at the Remembrall, then at him. Her mouth twitched. "Well, you didn't." She turned to head toward the girls' staircase, then hesitated at the bottom step. "Congrats on making the team," she said quietly, as she hurried up the staircase without looking back. "Thanks," Harry replied loudly. Ron raised a hand lazily. "Night." He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands behind his head. "Still think flying lessons are rubbish." Harry looked down at the parchment in his lap, not really reading it, just holding it. He glanced toward the stairs, then back at the fire. "No," he said softly. "Absolutely not." Halloween came to Hogwarts like a spell in itself. The feast was unlike anything Harry had ever seen. Pumpkins the size of cauldrons floated overhead, their carved faces grinning through the candlelight. Platters of roasted meats, golden potatoes and cauldron cakes shimmered under the enchanted ceiling which reflected a cloudy autumn sky. For once, even the ghosts were festive. Nearly headless Nick had added a paper hat to his severed collar, and Peeves had been suspiciously well behaved for an entire 20 minutes. Harry and Ron were locked in battle over a chessboard set between platters of food. Knight to E5, Ron said, smirking. His piece stomped forward and dramatically skewered Harry's bishop. Unfair, Harry muttered. You've played this since you were 6. I've played this since I was 2, Ron said. I used the pieces to teeth. Hermione was sitting across from the reading a folded parchment beside her plate, an extra credit assignment from Professor Flitwick, if her muttering was anything to go by. You know, she said without looking up, it's not efficient to combine root spells without examining their linguistic heritage. It just causes confusion. I bet that will be on the exam, no doubt. Ron blinked. Hermione, you say things like that and expect me to sleep at night. She rolled her eyes, but Harry smiled. It had started to feel normal, the 3 of them together. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Hermione suddenly rose from her seat, grabbing her parchment and quill with her. I'm going to finish the extra credit in some place quieter. Would either of you like to join? She asked them both, but W's clearly only looking at Harry. Harry didn't even glance up. Sorry, Hermione, Ron's got me on the ropes here. Ron moved his queen with a triumphant grin. Check! Harry stared in disbelief and quickly moved his piece to coat her. When he looked up to respond a moment later, she was gone. Before Ron could make a final move, Quirrell stammered into the great hall. To Troll, in the dungeons. Troll in the dungeon. Thought you ought to know, he said as he fainted. The great hall exploded into chaos. Students screamed, plates shattered, teachers rose at once, wands drawn. Silence! Dumbledore's voice boomed across the hall. Everybody froze looking at him. Dumbledore took a deep breath before addressing everyone in a calmer manner. Prefects, lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately. Teachers, follow me to the dungeon. Harry grabbed Ron's arm as the hall surged with bodies. Where's Hermione? They both froze. He hadn't seen her leave with the others. He turned, scanned the Gryffindor table, empty. She wasn't at dessert, Ron said. She must have gone to the bathroom early. Harry's eyes widened. Then she doesn't know. Without waiting, he turned and shoved through the crowd, dodging elbows and plates. Ron caught up quickly. This is the worst idea you've ever had. You don't even know all my ideas. They ran through the second-floor corridor, their footsteps echoing off stone. The castle felt darker now, less enchanted. Shadows seemed deeper, and the flickering torchlight looked pale. Then they heard it. A growl, heavy footsteps, the smell of unwashed socks and raw meat. And then the bathroom door flew open ahead of them. Hermione's scream followed it. Hermione! Harry shouted, charging forward. Inside, chaos. The troll towered over shattered sinks and dangling pipes. Hermione was backed against the wall, her wand raised but shaking. The beast roared. Over here! Ron yelled, flinging a piece of broken tile at its back. The troll turned. Bad idea. It swung its club sideways. Harry grabbed Hermione and yanked her down. The club crashed into a row of sinks behind them, sending ceramic flying. Brilliant, Hermione panted. "You've made it angrier." "Plan B?" Harry asked. "Plan B was don't die," Ron snapped. The troll charged again. They scattered. "Do something!" Hermione shouted. "I'm thinking," Ron bellowed. Harry threw a bar of soap. It bounced off the troll's belly like a gnat. "Do the spell!" Harry shouted. "What spell?" "Dunno, anything," Harry said as he ducked the swinging club. Ron fumbled for his wand. "Right, right," Ron shouted. "Wingardium Leviosa!" Nothing. "Wrist movement!" Hermione shouted. "Swish and flick!" "Wingardium Leviosa!" Ron tried again. The club suddenly jerked upward, straight out of the troll's hands, and hovered. Everyone looked up. Then it dropped right onto the troll's head. The beast stumbled and dropped like a sack of wet flour. Harry stumbled to Hermione's side. "Are you okay?" She nodded, shakily. "I didn't think anyone knew I was gone." "We did," he said. "We noticed." Ron was still holding his wand like it might explode. "That was insane." Then he grinned. "Did you see that? I knocked out a troll." "You did," Hermione said faintly. "But you used the wrong inflection." He laughed, high and sharp with leftover adrenaline. The door burst open. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell arrived seconds later, just in time to see Harry helping Hermione up from behind a crumbled sink. McGonagall's nostrils flared. "Would someone kindly explain? It was my fault," Hermione said at once, brushing hair from her face. "I went off alone. I didn't know. Harry and Ron came to find me." McGonagall looked at the troll, then at the 3 students, battered, wide-eyed but alive. She pressed her lips into a thin line. 10 points each. And next time, alert a professor before engaging a mountain troll. They nodded. As the adults began dealing with the unconscious troll, the 3 stood quietly, shoulder to shoulder. They sat in the common room in silence, all 3 of them. The fire had burned low. Most students had gone to bed. Hermione was curled on one side of the couch, legs tucked under her, wrapped in a blanket she'd found somewhere. Ron sat upside down in an armchair, staring at the ceiling. Harry held the Remembrall in his hands again, not spinning it, not checking it, just holding it. Some habits were hard to let go. "No one's ever come after me before," Hermione said quietly. Harry looked at her. She wasn't being dramatic, just stating a fact. Ron turned his head. "What you mean?" "I mean," she hesitated. "People notice me. They roll their eyes or they tolerate me, but they don't usually run into a troll." "We didn't run into the troll," Ron said. "We chased it. Totally different." She gave a small smile. Hermione looked into the fire. "Well, all in all, that was horrifying." "Which part?" Ron asked. "The club, the smell, or the bit where I heroically saved the day?" "The part where you nearly dropped your wand?" Hermione shot back. Harry smirked. "At least we're all still in one piece." "Speak for yourself," Ron said, examining a small tear in his sleeve. This robe was brand new. Harry laughed but said nothing. He eached over and placed the Remembrall in the centre of the table, like an offering. Or a marker. From this moment on, none of them would sit alone. They didn't say it. They didn't need to. It was understood. The next morning the castle had the hush of aftermath. Not silence. Hogwarts was never silent, but something beneath the clatter of breakfast and the shuffle of books. A sort of reverence, as though the castle itself was pausing to listen. The story of the troll spread faster than Filch's keys ever could. By the time Harry, Hermione and Ron reached the Great Hall, heads were already turning. Students whispered behind goblets. One second year gave Harry an outright salute. They slid into their usual spots at the Gryffindor table. Ron immediately loaded his plate with eggs. Hermione sipped tea and avoided looking up. Harry picked at a slice of toast and tried not to notice how many people were pretending not to stare. "You know," Ron said through a mouthful, "I didn't think knocking out a troll would make me this popular. Do you think this is what it feels like to be a famous Quidditch player?" "I think," Hermione said, stirring her tea, "you got lucky." Ron grinned. "I cast a spell. I levitated a club. That's not luck." "You also dropped your wand," she added. "Twice." "I recovered with flair." Harry smiled into his toast. It was the first time he'd felt settled. Not like everything was fine, because it wasn't. But like he wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. The three of them sat together, not out of chance or seating arrangements, but because they wanted to. They were a unit now, not perfect, not identical, but real.